Nice to see a young audience. We saw one last night, but it wasn't as young as this. It was an older audience at the San Diego Baha'i Center. That was quite a nice gathering too. And you are from all over this area, I take it. Are you all from right here, or are you nearby, or different places? Lovely. So you have to tell me what you want me to say this morning. I travel around the world a lot, and I was in Malaysia a few months ago at a big conference, 1,500 Baha'is from all over Southeast Asia, young, old, veteran pioneers and junior youth, everybody. It was amazing. It was a feast of love. Basically, the Baha'i faith is about love. Do you know that in the Baha'u'llah says, and this isn't just the Baha'i faith, this creation itself is about love, but love is the cause of creation. And Christ himself says God is love. The power of love is a light that comes from God and shines all over everybody. Some of us are waking up to the fact that it's shining, and others don't know it's shining yet. You have to kind of find it in yourself, as it's in you. It's what gives you the power to breathe. It's what gives you the power to digest your breakfast. Do you digest your own breakfast? No. So there's some intelligence and power that's doing everything that keeps us alive. And it also does whatever it needs when it takes us out of this world. We appear to be independent on ourselves. We can do whatever we want. Yes, that's right. He gives us that capacity. What you probably know by the name of free will means we can choose. And basically the choices are usually selfish choices or choices of service. Helping other people or helping ourselves. And those are the two challenges that we have all day, every day. There's different circumstances. We meet somebody. Are we going to smile at them? Are we going to be nice? Are we going to be sad-faced because they're not interested? We're not interested in them. We don't see what we can gain from knowing them or something like that. This attitude is there continually. And on those decisions we make all day long, every day, develops our character. If we're choosing to do things with kindness and with love and with trying to be helpful, then those habits become ingrained in us and they start to shine on us. And that develops our knowledge of spiritual matters, which is really knowledge of something in our spirits and not physical. For instance, love itself is not physical. Okay, it has an expression. It has an expression in love between individuals and expression in procreation of the human race. But if you wanted to say what color is love or how big is it, how would you do that? Because these realities are spiritual realities. Now at the moment, everyone is talking about the education system we have. Everything is talking about material. You learn from material, and material is everything. And I don't know if there's a God or if there's any spirit. I don't know. I don't understand any of that. Most people say it. Or they say definitely no God. Science is God. Well, if science is God, we're really in trouble. Because science invents all kinds of bad things along with good things. And it needs thinking about this law of love and service to guide science into those inventions which come from the human spirit, which can help humanity, which can solve the problems of the world rather than divide them or blow them up and demolish them, you know. So it's a tough question, but youth, I think I was asking, particularly when I was 17, I was asking. Wasn't a Baha'i till I was 18. I was asking, why am I here? What is the point of my being here? My parents would say, so that you can get an education and get a good job and find a nice wife and have children, and that's it. That's the whole thing. I said, that doesn't satisfy me as to why I exist, Why do you exist? What are you for? Are you useful for anything or not? I didn't make myself. Look at this powerful thing Baha'u'llah says. Knowest thou why we have created you all from the same dust? And he answers himself, he says, that no one should exalt themselves above another. No one should think that they're more important than anybody else. This is the core of the Baha'i teaching of unity. That is, no race, no group, no age group, no ethnic group, no religious group is higher than anybody else. Everybody's made of the same dust. Let's get humble and get to know each other on a basis of love of mankind. Abdu'l-Baha says, the will of God is that we love everyone. Since God loves us, he says, as an expression of the love that God has for us, that he's created us, he's put us into this world, he's supplied all kinds of, not very well organized at the moment because humans have organized it, but he's provided all kinds of services and substances and, the fruit of the trees and agriculture and good weather most of the time. So what does all this mean? I mean, why are we here? And the Baha'i teaching said that we're here because this is a school that we're in. God wants to teach us certain things. So he's placed us in this world and he's put all these things together to see if we can find our way. And he says that existence, life has 3 different stages. The first stage is inside our mothers, inside the womb of our mothers. And Abdu'l-Baha says, if you want to try to speak to the child while it's in the womb of the mother and explain this world, if you want to say, wait till you see this next world you're coming into, there's no limit in space, it goes forever. Stars and planets and it has things that grow. I don't know how to explain that to you, little baby, but these things grow, and they grow, the plants grow, and they have flowers. Guess what? These flowers turn into fruits, and you can eat those fruits with your mouth that you're doing nothing with right now. And the baby is saying, what in the world can this explanation be about? Then he's born into this world, and gradually through the gift of the 5 senses, and the intelligence, which only human beings have. The animals have a certain degree of intelligence, but human beings have this capacity to think about love. You can't ever explain love to an animal. You can show love to it and they feel it, but you can't explain it. You can't teach an animal that the earth is round. No way to do that. You can learn it. Human beings have gone up now and photographed it to show us everything. We're very different. We are animals in nature, but we're not animals in the end. We have an intelligence that needs to be educated too. And gradually you come of age, and you're the age where you're eating the fruit now that you could have heard about in the womb but wouldn't have understood. But now we have a new set of teachings that say there's a 3rd stage after we die, which is the really important stage, not this stage. This stage is temporary, and it's filled with calamities and difficulties. And oddly enough, the prophets tell us that those difficulties make us grow. They waken us to understand things. Suffering helps us to align ourselves with the divine purpose. It's mysterious. And it gives us happiness too. And the service to others, helping others, in the end, this is the thing that makes us most satisfied. It's the only thing that satisfies. If you taste that, the fruit of service, of helping others, of being kind to others, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is the biblical teaching. So if people are doing hateful things unto us, you don't want to do that back. You want to change that. And that requires a life of devotion. So the prophets of God come into this life, and they teach us about actually 4 steps, important steps that we have to face in our life. The first one is to learn how to pray. And you heard in the prayer this morning that we've been created to commune with you, with thee, with you. To walk in your ways and to declare your mysteries. The last 3 lines of this prayer that this young man read for us. Commune with you. This is the nature of prayer, is not to recite the prayers. The nature of the prayers is to converse and connect with our Creator. Now, our Creator is something that's so far beyond our understanding that we can't really say, well, I don't believe in God because I can't see God, I can't touch God, I don't know, what is God anyway? Well, that's a challenge for us. But if you think, he declares, he says he's present with us all the time. He's closer to us than our life vein. He said the wonder of it all is that we're so far from him. We don't think about him. We're busy with our own affairs and our own petty jealousies and upsets with each other and stuff like that. He's calling us to another kind of way we think, the way we view each other. And he tells us that in the womb, in the mother, we acquired physical powers. We were developing eyes, we were developing ears, and smell, and taste, feeling in the whole body. Those things are essential for complete life here. He says that here, this is another mother, Mother Nature, the mother of this physical world we live in, is developing us so that our spirit, born into the next world, has a complete vision. And he tells us things about the next world, like the suggestions I was saying to the child in the womb about the trees and the endless sky. He tells us that that world is a very busy world. It's a very complex world, much more than this. Everything here exists there in its more perfect form. You see reference to cities in the next world. You see reference to scenery, mountains, oceans. They have double meanings. They have spiritual meanings. You see that other world in your dreams. You see things in dreams. You taste things in dreams. Your mouth is shut, you're not eating anything, and you're tasting something. You're feeling things, and your body's asleep. Baha'u'llah says God has placed this mystery of the dream in us so that we can know there's another world where we don't need a body. We have a body. Also in the dream you have a body, right? You talk to people. You get scared, somebody chases you or does something. You know. Well, everything is going on in this world the same as this world. So we shouldn't imagine it's so different. It is very different, he tells us, but not to think of it as being less in any way this world. Because sometimes people get the idea from movies or from nonsense that after you die you're a ghost and you're you have no body and you're flying around making trouble for people, and I mean, this is ridiculous. In the dream, you've got a solid existence. You see yourself as an individual, you know, and you relate to people. So in the next world, you'll go and you'll be there with your great-grandparents and your grandparents and close friends and things that you've had in this world. Now you're young, you're not thinking about that so much because you're thinking about living in this world. But eventually it comes to that. You're going to go into the next world. And the people in the next world are waiting for you to come. Lots of times the people that are on their deathbeds, they're talking to people in the next world, and the doctor and the people say they're crazy, you know, they're talking to their mother or something. That's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, it's real. They're passing from this condition into the condition of the next world, and they're able to see and talk to people in the next world. Not everybody has it, but maybe you'll be close eventually to someone that you love that's passing. You'll see this experience, you'll understand it. Don't mistrust it. Lots of stories, interesting stories, like my wife had a cousin, and she got cancer. She was young, she was dying of cancer. So during the time she was ill, her auntie, who she loved very much, got ill and died. But they felt so bad that they didn't tell the girl that the auntie died. She was facing her own problems. She was in bed. She was so sick, so on. As she was dying, she says she's lying in the room, she starts saying, "Oh, Auntie Joan, you're there already." And they say, "But she doesn't know about Auntie Joan. How is that possible?" No, and she says, "Oh, I understand. Now you've gone to the other side. I'll see you there shortly." Wow, they were amazed. But that's there's many stories like that. In the next world, you don't lose identity. Some people think, you're like a drop here, and you go there and you drop in the ocean, and that's the end of it. No identity, no personal identity. No, but Baha'u'llah says you have eternity. You have an endless time after you go to the next world. Then you pass into different conditions and different worlds. But it depends on what you do in this world, what qualities, what spiritual capacities you will have. It's as if the services that you're doing to each other, the nature of your communion with God, your study of God, is like filling you with rocket fuel. So when you die, you can, the rockets, if they don't go very far, they just circle the world. But if they go very far, they circle the sun. You want to have a lot of rocket fuel so you can develop and serve in the next worlds. Now, besides communion, the other steps that for success in this life, the second one is after prayer is meditation. What's meditation? Have you thought about meditation? Because that's exactly what meditation is thinking about something. You look at the prayers and you say, what is this last line in this prayer? He says, declare the mysteries of God. What does that mean? You want to think about it. And you want to read other books, other writings, other spiritual writings, scriptures of the religions to see what kind of mysteries are we talking about? Mysteries generally have to do with our spiritual nature, things we don't see, stories about love, explanations about love, the love that we must have for each other, the love we must have for our Creator, that love that inspires us to sacrifice ourselves for others, to put ourselves first. There's a big switch in character. If we do that, then he said the third one is to study the Holy Scriptures a lot. So if you want to be able to pray well and you want to be able to meditate on what the writings and spiritual meanings of things are, you need to read the Holy Writings. What does Baha'u'llah say? You see, he gives us certain prayers. He said, these are obligatory prayers. You use these prayers every day and you will gradually develop spiritually. It's like eating. If you eat on a regular basis, your health improves if you eat good things. So spiritually, we have to have a diet of prayer and meditation and service and study of the writings, and then action, where we share the teachings and our discoveries with others, and we also serve them socially in any way we can, being kind to people and so on, participating in different projects that the community creates for us so we can more easily participate or understand and gradually watch others and learn from them how they're doing things. Watch amongst each other which people become really radiant, because it's like light comes into them. When they have the right connection with God, they become like mirrors. At the beginning, Baha'u'llah says our mirror is covered with dust, but prayer and meditation and service clean the dust, and then the reflection of the sun is bright. So you see these people full of love, and nothing seems to bother them, and they're able to have such patience with each other, and those are the qualities that we enjoy. And in such a condition, then we receive inspirations. And we receive inspirations in accordance with the gifts that we may have. So we may be artists, we may be scientists, we may be service providers, we all different capacities that are in us. And we'll find our way, because we each have a different set of gifts from God that are lying in us, waiting to come out. Everybody has a destiny. He assures us there's a perfect destiny for every individual. And the way you reflect these gifts and things is different from every person that exists. Seems like we're similar, but we're also different. We're all made from the same dust, but we all have a different quality of light in us. Now, if you don't develop those spiritual qualities and reflect those talents and capacities that are coming from the other world, he says, inspired by souls that have passed on, they become the leaven. You know what a leaven is in the bread? You put the leaven in the bread and it swells up. Baha'u'llah says, holy souls that have gone on to the next world, souls that have learned how to love and serve, they become the means of channeling arts and sciences into this world. So all kinds of things develop then. If you don't develop your own talents and your capacities, and Baha'u'llah says the importance of education and study and knowing about all things, you deprive society of a gift that God has created and has given to society in the person of you. Nobody else can do that but you. It becomes very important, and that becomes very important what you become in the next world at the same time. So think about the gifts that you have, the bounties that you have, the trials that you have, because also the difficulties that come to us. God is pushing us to awaken to our talents and capacities. It's all a bit overwhelming, a bit, a huge message all at once, but this is the basis of our existence here. What are we going to do with it? And you guys are hearing about it ahead of most of the people on the planet. You have access to knowledge. Some of these mysteries, he says, that were mentioned in that prayer, declare my mysteries. Those mysteries are in the writings, and then they're shared by us with each other. Just the simple truth that says, if you're injured, don't return injury to the person that's injured you. For the sake of your Creator, leave it. Don't respond to anger with anger. Learn how to control and moderate yourself so that you can calm situations and produce peace and produce cooperation amongst people. Abdu'l-Baha said that if you want to look at everybody, you can find so much wrong and problems in anybody. Any one of us has got all kinds of shortcomings. We do all kinds of things that we shouldn't be doing. But he said, don't look at those things. Look at the fact that each one of us is a mirror that can reflect this light of love to each other. And busy ourselves with polishing the mirror and being kind to people and help lift them so we can have a society, a world society where everyone can exist and grow spiritually and move to the next world with the developments that he intended, so that we can be happy in the next world instead of arriving there all with lots of problems. And love has two poles to it. One is love of self, let's say that's at the bottom, where we love the world because we want something from it for ourselves. And the other is love of God, where we love the world because He's created us and we're all together as one family. Selfishness is self-love, is the opposite. If you use your love for self, if you don't care about what happens to other people, you just care about yourself. You want money for yourself, you want education for yourself, you want fun for yourself, my God. Such an emphasis on fun these days. You don't see any of that in the holy writings. You see happiness and you see joy, but not fun. Fun just to spin your wheels and not be unhappy. So we want to make other people happy. We want to do that. And that, again, develops our qualities. I don't know. I'd like to stop here for a second and see if you have any questions related to these larger subjects of life, the purpose of existence? Have you discovered it in yourself? Are you satisfied with the answers that you're receiving? Do you have any questions or particular... maybe just before I go with that, the phrase that was in that prayer, walk in my ways, or walk in thy ways, walk in God's ways, which is the suggested rules that he tells us what to do and what not to do. Nobody likes that. We like to do what we want to do. But the do's and the don'ts are important, because you slow yourself down if you do the things you're not supposed to do. So what are the things you're not supposed to do? There's some basic, simple rules like don't drink alcohol, because alcohol has become the source of the corruption of the human race. I'll tell you, we lived in Chile. Some of us are from Chile. We lived in Chile, and at the time we were there, it was about 40% of the adult population were alcoholics. Now, that was mostly the men in the families. They would get their money from their jobs, and they'd go and spend it on alcohol, and the kids would be hungry. That's not... It isn't that Baha'u'llah would say, don't have a glass of wine, although it turns out that even wine, every drop of alcohol tends to destroy human brain cells. They're just starting to look at... They don't like to look at that because everybody wants to drink. But this is very helpful. If you can get it in your head to not sample alcohol. The other thing is all the, what do they call them now, the kind of drugs, entertaining drugs, or what do they have another word for it? Recreational drugs. Recreational drugs. Great. My wife is reading some books about this, about people who've been addicts for a long time and gotten out of it. They've written some very interesting books. She says basically the rule is don't ever try it. So if you don't want to, you'll never become an addict if you never try it. If you try it, you say, well, let me see how it is. You maybe get caught in this addiction, because the little bit of it you take stimulates you fine. It creates feelings that should be coming from spirituality, from behavior. It substitutes them. You get them easy, quick fix. Suddenly I'm relieved of my pain and my suffering. But then every time you have to take more and more and more, and then you end up being addicted. And you say, well, what everybody's doing it. What's the difference? No, everybody's going downhill with it, who takes it. You see people who, I mean, they've been on amphetamines and things afterwards. By the time they're 30, they're looking like they're 60 or 70. It's just a tragic situation. So much of humanity, particularly in this country, is suffering from that. So walk in my ways is to avoid alcohol. Then the other thing is that some kind of moderation with regard to your sexual lives and sexual desires, to realize that they're intended mainly for a state of marriage, not ignoring that they don't exist, they exist. I think the nice thing about the people who understand these teachings, they can, the boys and the girls can talk. I'm attracted to you, I like you a lot. But we have to behave until we investigate each other's characters or decide whether we're going to get married or not. We have to be careful about how far we go. Now a lot of people are involved. They become sexually alive and active, and then they have to pull back a little bit. And again, Baha'u'llah, he prescribes limitations to the sexual life. So you've got alcohol, drugs, and sexual things. These are the three big humbugs of youth. And they are like veils, that stop you. You get involved in that and you don't care about religious matters, spiritual matters. You're just interested in scoring, so to speak. Because you hear everybody's comparing That, and you have to know so many other things that are useless to know, like all the scoring of the NBA or the football heroes and who they are and how many did this and did that. And I came back, I was out of the country 50 years. When I came back, I wasn't sure which ball they were even playing with. I didn't know anything of it. I was like, this guy's really ignorant. He doesn't know. He's never heard of. They'd name basketball stars. I really didn't know who they were at all. Missed a lot of music heroes and heroines of those 50 years too. We were living in South America, then we were living in the Middle East and traveling in Africa, all far distant from all these things. Okay, back. Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? Do you have any suggestions for each other? What's next in your life? What are you thinking about? What do you want to do? Are your goals the same as the goals we're talking about, or are they different? How can you combine our own goals with these spiritual goals? Anywhere I go in the world, talk to youth, there's this terrific silence. It's part of being youth, is that, you know, I can expose myself in front of everybody and say what I'm thinking, but sometimes there's a breakthrough, and then everybody has a good time and they say what they're thinking and what they want to. You got to be open. Your stupid question is somebody else's stupid question. They told me that when I was a new Baha'i. They said, you have a question, you may think it's stupid, but there's somebody else with the same question. Don't worry, it's not a stupid question, it's just where our minds go. Somebody will say, you're talking about God. Well, where's God? I don't see God. How do I know God? How do you know God? Can you answer that question? Anybody? No. One honest head shake in the room here. And yet we're told we're created to know and love God.
How can, like, I know there are certain teachings in certain books that say we can prove, or like how to tell people God exists, but I was just wondering how. How can we prove God exists when, I mean, we don't even know for sure ourselves. We can't measure in any way that he exists. The only way we know is 9 people and what they've said. How do we know they're even authentic, or how do we know? Yeah, how do we know any of this is real? How do we know God exists?
Well, the 9 people and what they say, this is very supplementary to what one person has said, which is the manifestation of God. The 9 people are supplementing that with changing social laws and social conditions. But the divine truths are inherent in the revelation itself. Now, he says that because you imagine the intelligence behind the whole universe. First of all, we say God is one. The Bob talks about God being like, he says the primal point, this point is one point. But he says the oneness of God is like that point if you erased it. That's the oneness of it. It's everything. And so it's very difficult to bring it into consciousness. But actually, his consciousness is what gives you consciousness. But this is hard to teach people right off. How do we... In the past holy books it says, will ye not see the signs of God in the universe and in your own selves? Now think of this, we know more and more about the universe. Now Baha'u'llah says there's no limit in space or in time to the universe. It never had a beginning. You know, I talk about Big Bang and things. These are theories. It's all right, you don't have to deny them. We're trying to find our way and understand from science certain things too. But the scripture says clearly this has always existed. it turns out that the Big Bang may be a local bang, may be a little bang in our little universe. And it just goes on forever and ever. Now behind that there's an intelligence that's in touch with every single creature throughout this universe, knows their condition. What kind of intelligence is that? Baha'u'llah says if there was any way you could understand that, you would be God. But it's impossible. You don't even understand all the things that are happening in your body all the time. Again, he says, will ye not observe the signs of God in the universe and in your own selves? Back to digesting your breakfast. I mean, yes, I digest my breakfast. Oh yeah, you're proud of yourself, huh? You do that. Do you know how that happens? Do you have any idea of the chemistry that's going on? You know how, there's so many things going on in the body that we don't even know about. Some people can produce tears when they want, others can't. But if you didn't have tears in your eyes, you weren't going to do very well of seeing. That's all these things have been provided. So he says, look at these signs in yourself, the intelligence reflected in your being, in your existence. And then look at the universe, how endless it is. How do you expect to put God into it? So what we do is we affirm that there is God, but that we don't know Him. And then the manifestation, the messengers of God, they come and they say, this is right. You don't know Him and you can't know Him. But He has provided messengers, which are like clear mirrors of His light and His teachings, to tell you about Him. And the knowledge of those messengers is the same, he says, as the knowledge of God. That's the knowledge of God that human beings are supposed to have. They can't go beyond that. You can't encompass the whole endless universe and the being that's behind them. So by having Moses, by having Christ, by having Baha'u'llah, where we direct ourselves, who we can talk to about these things spiritually inside our own being, is provided. Otherwise, it's very hard. So you're explaining, I think, to people the signs of God. In other words, the signs of intelligence in creation is the first step to take towards understanding that there is a creator. And also, this is not running down. It's not like, a wind-up clock that it's going to stop. There's some constant creative power acting in you. And as soon as it ceases, you leave this plane of existence and go to another one. Nobody can choose the hour they're born, who their mother and father are going to be, where they're going to be born. All that is out of our control. We think we're in control, but we're not really in control. And nobody can stop the hour of their death. It's when it's coming, it's coming. Abdul Wahab says, we've all been given a certain amount of oil. And when the oil is finished, kaput, finished. The human outside physical being is finished. But he said, beware, because he says also the wind can blow the fire out. So there are accidental deaths that are not intended, but God has given you a certain amount of oil to keep you alive until the time when you'll be moved to the next world. So between the miracles of the universe and the miracles of our own being, from a spiritual point of view, in the writings it says that it's the divine light, the Spirit of God, that is actually what produces consciousness in us. It also maintains all the physical realms of being, the mineral and the vegetable and the animal and the human, but the human has this intellectual power. The intellect in the sense of mind that can think about things, can discover the mysteries, unseen things of nature and bring them out, The capacity that enabled us to fly to the moon. Extraordinary discoveries and things. Anybody else think that, I think, you have to move from what is God to who are the messengers of God, and do they have more capacity than we do, and do they see things that we don't see? And that's what he says. they instruct us. They inspire faith in us. Anybody else want to refer to that? Nope. You have to be careful when you stretch. I'll be able to call on you to say something.
I have a question, but it's a little sidetracked. It's not really about who is God, but more as our roles as Baha'is. So, the Baha'i faith teaches us that we can't have a fragmented life, that we have to have an inclusive life. So how, as a youth, do we tackle that? Like, how do we have our line of service and working in the community versus that of our jobs or our schools? Like, how do we include all those together?
Yeah. Well, if your light shines, it shines in all the circumstances of your life, So maybe you're not talking openly about the faith, but kindness and spiritual qualities in your workplace or in your study situation or interaction with strangers that's part of the integrated Baha'i life, I think. I don't know. How do you find it?
I struggle, for sure. It's, I don't know.
We're not always teaching the faith, but we are always teaching the faith, because by the way we act, by our attitudes, by our insights, it communicates to people, I heard that the Master said, you want to teach the faith, if you're going to meet a person one time, deliver the message, tell people about it. You may never see them again. You're on the streetcar, you're sitting next to them in a plane, you're walking down the street together and you start a conversation. Tell them that Baha'u'llah has come and that he's brought solutions and that it's very interesting to know about. If you're going to see them a number of times, then Abdul says, live the life, live the Baha'i life. Show loving kindness to them. Show these attitudes of love and of sacrifice and helpfulness till they start saying, why, you're a different kind of person, what is it, And then Baha'is experience this, that people ask them, what is it you know? You're always happy, you always have a smile. Why, how is that possible? Everybody's so miserable, and they're drowning themselves in alcohol and drugs, and you're walking around happy. Are you just stupid, or is this, what do you know that I don't know? It happens sometimes. People ask you that directly. I don't understand how you always have a smile on your face. That would be integrated life, you want to have, it's more a question of spiritual qualities than how you divide your time. Because you're always in touch with people. So we have corporate activities, we have the community activities, we have institutions to serve and so on. But apart from that, one has their own duty directly with God, which is this question of prayer, meditation, study, and action, in the right balance, so that the action is effective. Well, Baha'u'llah says, if you don't teach yourself, and you don't begin to act according to the teachings that God has given, then how will you communicate it to anybody else? He said you won't be effective, you won't be able to communicate it. So there's quite a bit of question of absorbing the Baha'i teachings so that we can try to live according to them. And sometimes we gain a little bit, but then we compare ourselves, we look around and we say, wow, I'm doing more than anybody else. You go back to the tail of the class. The only one we can compare ourselves with is Abdul Baha. If you compare yourself with Abdul Baha, we are always short. We always have something more to accomplish. That's why he's called the exemplar. He gives the example of how we should all be. So many situations where Abdul Baha shows love and kindness to people, he doesn't teach them the Baha'i faith, so to speak, or the Baha'i teachings. Like the guy he saw who his pants were all shredded when he was, I think it was in Boston or someplace, Abdu'l-Baha slips behind a wall and takes his pants off under his abba and gives them to this guy. He didn't tell him these are Baha'i pants or something like that. Right? So he's doing the spiritual thing that he's supposed to be doing, you know. Never look down on somebody that's socially poor or in a bad situation. Baha'u'llah says if you sit with the people who are homeless and have nothing and ask them what they're suffering and what's going on, he said the angels gather over your head, they're so excited. And the service that you do with the spirit of the love of God is noticed from the other world. There's other holy souls watching, and they'll confirm you. They'll send powers to you. They'll send gifts to you. They'll send inspiration to you. Maybe you're not aware of it, but do you remember that first part in the prayer book where it says, when you say that your prayers in the privacy of your chamber, the scattering angels of the Almighty diffuse the influence of those prayers to your neighbors. Talk about powerful neighborhood projects. That's a good one. If everybody's praying at dawn, you're casting seeds in the whole community. I saw a letter in the writing of the Guardian, Shoghi Effendi, has written to a couple that went as Baha'i pioneers, Baha'i teachers, to an island in Asia somewhere. And they were there for some time, and they didn't find anybody who was interested in the teachings that they could teach. But they were there, and they were sacrificing their lives, and they were praying. And Shoghi Effendi says, be not concerned that there haven't been new Baha'is there. That the character of your sacrifice in making efforts to serve those people has diffused the divine confirmations. They've filled up the whole island, and they will be the cause of seeds in the future growing and developing until there's a full Baha'i community there. Just from the time that you were there, and from your point of view, we're doing nothing, there will be a terrific success and development. Now, you think, you know, if you have unity of prayer amongst yourselves, you can change this whole area. Baha'u'llah says one soul that's confirmed, that really sacrifices himself for the well-being of the others, can illumine a whole country, can transform a whole country. We're not doing much of that thinking now, but then he says nothing changes human hearts but this divine confirmation that flows from the other world through us when we sacrifice our time and our lives to offer the healing is actually this power of the divine, of the Holy Spirit that comes through the individual and touches the heart of new people, awakens them. And he says nothing else awakens them. And pity the Baha'i or the person that thinks they're teaching the Baha'i faith successfully and they're changing people. We don't have the capacity to change people. That spirit has the capacity to change people. How do we get ourselves out of the way so that that spirit flows through us? If you think about these ideas, you'll see that I think you'll see them reflected in the prayers for teaching and the prayers that are in the prayer books. We're asking for confirmation. We're asking to assist me. We're asking to give the words that I need to talk to other people when I meet them. We're praying every morning to meet souls that will be receptive to this message, that the healing will go immediately and start changing them. Then this is an army, you know, it swells, it gets bigger and bigger. And you need that to accomplish the goals of the faith that are there on the wall and all the different things we want to do. Prayer, meditation, study of the writings, of the holy writings, particularly the verses, because the verses are like polish. The words of Baha'u'llah are like a polish on the heart. They clean the heart till it gets to be a very shiny mirror. Then that mirror reflects the spirit of God, the spirit of the faith to other souls. Abdu'l-Baha says there's certain material proofs to the existence of God. He offers some. You can see them in some answered questions and some of the other tablets. But he says, as to the spiritual proofs, once one attains the spiritual proof, that is the confirmation of the Spirit in your own soul, he says you don't need any more proofs. It's quite clear. The power of God, the help of God. What else? Much less, much more? I don't know. It's a delight to see you all gathered here this morning. What's the purpose of the gathering? Again, it's the love of service. Otherwise, what would you be here for? You're trying to find your way, you know. That's just a great sign already. What are the motivations of our coming together today? Why are you bothering to listen to me? Well, all of this is, you know, it's this very interesting dynamic that's happened here. I heard of the faith when I was 17, and I'd been kind of begging God, begging something. If there's any consciousness that's more conscious than me, let me know what I should be doing, because I don't understand why I'm here. I see the people running around like sheep. They're going here, they're going there, they're doing things, and you ask them, why are you alive? Nobody can answer. I don't know. Can you answer that question to yourself? Why am I alive? Why do I exist? What am I here for? Is there any reason, or is it just, well, that's the way it is? I don't know. There's so much taking for granted, you know, but that taking for granted is mostly a very materialistic outlook on life. That the acquisition of goods and more wealth, that's the most important thing in life. That's a quality of American society. Now, some of you are from Asian background, from Latin American background. There, the quality of life is more, what they rate highest is relationship with other souls, with other people, friends, and supporting friends, and so on. Much more important than how much I can acquire, how much wealth I can get, how many houses can I have, all that kind of thing. Very different kind of, the center of materialism in the world is this United States. And it distorts the way we look at life. And then you're a failure because you're not wealthy, you don't have the latest car, all these kind of things. That's not the way God's looking at the situation. Rejoice not in prosperity, and lament not in poverty. They both come and go. They come and go, come and go. You see people passing through these stages. If our happiness is pinned on that, we will be disappointed.
You have traveled the world quite a bit, and you met youth in different communities. Can you tell us some stories of what actions they have taken and in different communities, and what you have seen, what kind of services they are doing, and how they are different than the youth in these countries in the United States?
I think it's easier in places where there's not so much materialism to, you haven't had people telling you that there's no God, or it's more a natural feeling towards the Creator and towards each other. And most places are people very eager about education. And of course, Baha'i emphasizes the importance of education, of learning all kinds of things about science, about the world, about ourselves. Here there's a kind of, right up through high school, a kind of a negative, the teenage response is a negative feeling towards education. Like, I don't need this, You never know more about the world than when you're 16. That's the maximum you're ever going to know, and well, at least what you think you know. And you always know more than your mother and father, that's for sure. That quality is what Shoghi Effendi and the Master said is where we are now in humanity. We're in the adolescence. We're just in this teenage period of development, so violent and difficult, where the human race has acquired new capacities for unity, but it uses them both positively and negatively. So I've got water here if you're running for water. That's what I was just saying, and I have water here. So they were going to look for water. Thank you. I saw you put that. No, I thought I should have some water there, and you brought water at that instant, so you're guided by unseen forces. Yeah. Thank you very much. I was just telling you that I have a water. Okay, who are the organizers? What do we do next? Yes?
Do you have any memorable stories of service to the youth throughout some of the travels that you've made?
You know, maybe we should go further back than that and look at the youth in the Dawnbreakers. I mean, the Bab himself was young, and Qudus was young, and Mullah Hussein was a little bit older, but not much older. He was in his 20s. They were the great heroes of the faith, you know. Shoghi Effendi stressed that the youth should read, digest, and master the stories in the Dawnbreakers, because they have a terrific force to motivate, to inspire us to action. Not just to learning, but both learning and then action. And that young people should be able to repeat these stories, remember them accurately and repeat them. They'll have an influence on others when they tell these stories. Now, Book 4 is giving you some of in the Institute course is giving you some knowledge of this, but go further than that. Read Dawnbreakers together, maybe have little classes, a few of you together, and try to penetrate. Especially in this year of the bicentennial of the birth of the Bab, the House of Justice emphasized knowing the lives of these heroes, being inspired by them. What do we do? Do we take a break and come back again, or do you have some more questions? What do you want to do?
I have a question.
Please.
Do you have any process for learning? Is there any way that you prefer to learn, I guess?
You know, I studied the extracts from the letters of Shoghi Effendi about the study of the cause, because he emphasizes, he's drawing from, of course, what Baha'u'llah says. If you want to teach the cause, he said that everyone should teach the cause. There's no clergy, so we all have the opportunity to teach. What's not realized, I think, is that in the society where Baha'u'llah and the Bab were born, if you tried to teach any religion, if you even mentioned a religious phrase, you would be attacked. That's not your job. That's only the ulama, only the clergy can do that. Everybody else is, shut your mouth. You're not allowed to speak about God unless you've trained in the Quran and in all the traditions and so on. So that this Bab, who is a businessman, a mercer, selling products, starts talking about God, this is absolutely off base. How could God send a messenger of God who wasn't one of the clergy? That was the first question everybody asked. But we don't realize that, because we all can talk about what we want to talk about. No, you couldn't talk about spiritual matters. Same with Baha'u'llah. He was he's from the upper class and ministerial positions of his father and so on. He wasn't permitted, and yet they entered into discussions and arguments with the clergy, and they would outdo them. That made the clergy very upset. How's this guy able to explain things better than I can explain them, you know. So study. Reading is first thing is reading, is really reading, and maybe reading with somebody else if you don't really understand the words. Reading with a dictionary. I think the Bahai's best friend is the dictionary because there's so many things that we think we know what it means, and when we look up the words we realize that I didn't know what that meant, you know. We hear about consolidation. What is consolidation? Look it up in the dictionary, find out what it is. So read, and then Shoghi Effendi says, read and reread the basic writings of the faith. Read and reread. Don't stop reading. There's no end to reading the Igan. Shoghi Effendi asked a group of pilgrims that were there one night, have you read the Igan? And they went around the room and said, yes, yes, yes. One American said, yes, I've done it. Shoghi Effendi was quiet. But the next pilgrim group, the hands were there and listening to it, he said, you know, last pilgrim group, there was an American here that said he'd done the Igan. He says, you can't do the Igan. You never finish the Igan. You're always reading it and studying it. And then he says that after you do that, you should delve systematically, patiently into the writings. Look at them, examine them, try to absorb them. Then he uses the word digest, digesting the writings of Baha'u'llah. And finally, he talks about mastering. You think, well, that's the finish. If I master all the contents of these books, that'll be enough. No, he goes on one stage more. What's the last stage? Teaching, of course, yes, that's the ultimate outcome. But it's memorizing characteristic passages. I remember the Hand of the Cause, Mr. Khadem was in Geyserville way back in the 50s. Youth of your age, we were all sitting under a tree with him, and he said, it's very important to memorize the writings. So we said, what do you suggest we memorize? And he said, the Kitab-i-Igan. Our mouths all dropped. How would you possibly memorize the Kitab-i-Igan? It's a whole book. Who can memorize a book? I have a hard time with, one paragraph. So he started talking. He said, in Iran, if you want to go into teaching religion, you have to memorize the Quran. And you have to memorize it in a language that's not your own. Memorize it in Arabic. Do you know how big the Quran is? You know how big it is? 14-year-olds memorize the whole thing. They have to recite it from memory to go to the next stage of studies. We sell ourselves short. We say, well, nobody can memorize. Who can memorize, So he said, okay, Mr. Khadem, we can't memorize. He saw that. He says, okay, so Epistle to the Son of the Wolf. No, that's not going to work either. Tablets to the Kings, maybe some of them. Finally, he got down to Tablet of Carmel, and we said, well, we could try Tablet of Carmel. And I remember we all tried to memorize. This is 5 or 6 pages long in the Gleanings. We tried to memorize it. And I think I had it memorized, most of it, for about 2 weeks. And then it was gone again. And he was gone, so that. But make an effort to learn it well enough. There's 3 stages of the development of our teaching work. The first stage, we repeat what we know, what we've heard from the teachings, and we usually have a favorite teaching, and we teach that favorite teaching to anybody that we're talking to, because that's the one we like best. Equality of men and women, or rights and privileges of men and women, or science and religion, or world peace. I love it when I hear the Baha'i say, we believe in world peace. Oh yeah? Where do you see that? We don't believe in world peace. We believe world peace is necessary, and the Baha'i teachings provide the means and the prerequisites to establish a permanent and lasting peace. But peace, just say we believe in peace, sounds like you're an idiot, Nothing but war in the world. All right, so you've got this read, reread, painstakingly delve into the writings. That's from the Advent of Divine Justice. Then you have digest the contents of these major books, master the contents, be able to repeat the stories and memorize characteristic passages. Then he says your words will take effect in the hearts of the listeners. How do we balance out? Also, we're told, okay, we want to share. So we're talking about these 3 stages of teachers. I share what I heard about my favorite teaching, why I became a Baha'i, or why I like the Baha'i faith, was this teaching. So I repeat that. And Shoghi Effendi says, you say what you can remember from the writings, and then you add your own ideas on top of that, and it dilutes it and may not be effective or very effective. Meanwhile, you keep studying, you keep going to courses and Rui courses and everything else. You're gathering knowledge of the faith. And he said, then the teacher gets to a stage where they can repeat the teachings of the faith in their own words. But they don't go out of that. They pretty much actually explain the Baha'i teachings, for example, teach the unity of mankind, the oneness of God. These things are correct in themselves. They're not mistaken. Then he said the third stage is where, while giving the teachings, the basic teachings of the faith, explaining to somebody, you quote words, passages, hidden words, or different phrases from the Kitabi Aqdas and so on, because you've studied them carefully and they're part of your vocabulary, come out. Like I started this morning with this, do you know why God created you all from the same dust? So nobody could exalt himself over another's. He said, when you use the holy writings, it goes into the hearts of the people, much stronger than your own words. Then at the same time, you have prayers that you're saying, when I open my mouth, please, Baha'u'llah, help me say something useful. Also, the angels understand the consciousness of the people you're talking to, and they inspire you with the kinds of things you need to say. And sometimes you'll find in an audience or in people you're talking to, they'll say back to you, that was amazing. When you were talking, I formulated certain questions in my mind. As soon as I formulated those questions, you answered them without me saying what they were. Now that's the kind of inspiration you want to get to, where you know the teachings well enough that you're sensitively open to the needs of the listener and you provide whatever they need. Because there's a huge medicine chest, Abdu'l-Baha says. All the Baha'i teachings are like a medicine chest filled with medicines. You have to be the doctor that looks at the patient and says, what does he need from these teachings that will attract him, that will heal him, and give them in the order that they need to be given. So the guy who drinks alcohol all the time, you don't want to tell him, oh, in the Baha'i teaching we're forbidden to drink alcohol. It closes the door immediately to any progress in teaching him. Abdu'l-Baha says, never choose anything from the writings which becomes an obstacle to the soul moving towards God. That's interesting in itself. He says that eventually there's a time when those teachings will come, the individual needs to hear everything. There's no secrets. But the order in which they're given so that the faith and the confidence of the listener grows is very important to have in mind. Anyway, we actually pray so you don't make those mistakes. Probably I've said some things here this morning too strong for some of you, and you forgive me, but that's... Does that answer the question more or less? Yeah. Never done.
Do you have any more questions or maybe
I have a question for young people, and I was very similar when I was teaching. The capacity to read and understand is, young people have it at all different levels. So maybe
Yes.
a young person who has a hard time reading or understanding, or maybe they have some sort of learning disorder, or something out of the control, comprehension issues. Is there a recommended I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, a recommendation of where to start, or maybe just a little bit at a time, or?
Yeah, you need, morning and evening, Baha'u'llah says you should read the verses, so even a few verses. But then you want to read them with comprehension and not just rote repetition of them. Abdu'l-Baha says both reading the verses out loud, even if you're alone, saying prayers out loud helps you to concentrate and helps you to understand the content. But also they're valid when you're saying them to yourself as well. But I think it's important that, and I think that the Ruhi courses right now help the individual sitting in a circle reading to gather a mutual understanding of what's being said. But there's no solution to learning to read except learning to read. Don't say to yourself, oh, I don't have the capacity. You all have the capacity. You just have to push a little bit. And reading out loud is an important element of that, because you have to understand to read it out loud, you have to understand it. And patience with each other when mistakes are made. Muhammad, there was one of the disciples of Muhammad, when he would recite the call to prayer, he would make a mistake. And after that, the believers were laughing about how in the call to prayer, he made this stupid mistake. And Muhammad said, blessed is the man that recites the verses of God, and twice blessed is he who hesitates and mistakes something while reciting the verses. There's patience. God is patient. The messengers of God are patient with us when we shouldn't judge each other in any way. Be patient, but help each other to learn reading and recitation of the writings. Go over the obligatory prayers together, think about the meanings of them, make sure people understand the words. These are so essential. Do you have another solution? I don't know. You're dealing with them.
Oh.
Reading, yeah.
I don't, well, I think even just the tiniest quote can have so much power. Just a few words are amazing, and
Yeah.
starting a little bit at a time. Yeah, it's just the answers are all there,
Don't be impatient with yourselves.
When you talked about memorization, I always think I cannot memorize anything, but then I go to the place and I see them for 2 hours have the whole thing memorized,
Yeah.
and they can act it. And I go, okay, maybe they can do it. But then you go to another place, somebody else is there. So that is a learning thing. We
Yeah,
can do
yeah,
it
yeah.
if we
Takes
train
effort.
ourselves. But when we don't, we think, okay, it's impossible. But apparently it is possible, because you see other people doing it over and over, and they memorize different plays and different things, and they can do it for 2-3 hours
Yeah.
non-stop. So it's like memorizing Kitab al-Iman.
Well, Mr. Kaze said there were Iranian Baha'is, youth, that had memorized the Igan, or memorized the Kitab Akdas, or memorized the Epistle to the Son of Thoth. They had the whole thing memorized. That gives you a terrific repertoire to be choosing things to use in the teaching work, but
Practice makes perfect.
it's a huge challenge, yeah. I can't recommend that highly because I don't do it myself, and you're in trouble if you tell people to do things that you don't do yourself.
But I'm sure you have done that. But maybe for the next time we are getting together, our hope is to read the prayers and do more memorization, and then hopefully more service, as our youth are in charge of the future. Well, any other question? We are honored to have Mr. Dunbar here with us, and it's a really privilege to have him here. So if you have any questions, otherwise we can take a break and you can ask him in private, or...
Yeah. If we come, will we come back again? Then afterwards I'll tell you some stories, if you like, of different places in the
I
world.
don't know if everybody's coming back later this afternoon, but if you want to share a story and then we can break.
It's time, this is the end of the morning break until the evening then.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You want to share a story with us? And then from your travels, a funny story from the youth?
There's one more question.
What do you think was the biggest thing that changed your perspective throughout your entire life? What do you think is the biggest thing that has changed your perspective?
Can you repeat the question? We couldn't hear back there.
Oh, I asked if throughout his entire life, what was the biggest thing that changed, or what was the biggest shift in perspective throughout his entire life?
The one truth of the faith that struck me so strongly at the very beginning when I heard about it was progressive revelation. Because suddenly I could see, here are these religions all in conflict with each other, and Baha'u'llah is saying, look at the spiritual teachings, at the words of the manifestation of the messengers of God, you'll see they're one. Then that becomes the unity of religions, becomes the basis for the oneness of mankind. You saw that. That struck me so strongly. Really just. The first meeting I heard it, I was giggling with excitement about that. They thought I was on drugs or something, because it made me so happy to hear this thing. I asked how to become a Baha'i, and they looked shocked, like, oh, you better find out what it is first. My acting career started with, I played the lead in a play in New York, off-Broadway, called The Young Disciple, which was about the coming of a messenger of God to New York in modern times, and the character I played was like Paul and his response, and intellectual and the not, and it was very interesting. As I didn't know about the Baha'i faith yet. Then I came back to California, and because of that experience in theater, I was able to get into some films. And I was young, and I was skinny, and self-conscious about being skinny. But the first part I was in, they put me in a turtleneck t-shirt, tight turtleneck t-shirt, so I looked like a spider or something. And that was my first film role. That wasn't very long, and I was glad that was over. Then I went to a second one, was in Union Pacific, a series that was on at that time, where I played a young man who was also a nerd and not very physically adept, and they told me I had to beat on this punching bag and get strong and so on, and I have a heart attack and die. But I was in a cut off, what do you call these things? The shirts with no sleeves, Yeah. So I was completely exposed, all my scrawny self. Then I got a role in a major film at Fox Studios, and I had to have a screen test for that, but I got through the screen test, and I got the part. It was a supporting role in the whole film. It was Pat Boone, who was a popular singer at that time. It was his first film in CinemaScope. CinemaScope was a powerful medium, but they needed so much light. It was incredible. You had to have doubles for each of the actors to stand there while they adjusted the lights, and at the last minute you went in and they filmed the scene, because everybody would sweat. It was so hot, just so hot. So I got to the studio. They said, okay, we're going to start filming, and the first scene was a scene in the boys' locker room where the guys are troubling each other, And I need to come out of the shower. Now I'm completely naked with a towel around. And I thought to myself, I became a Baha'i about that time. I thought, this is going in the wrong direction. The next thing they're going to want to take the towel away, and I'm not interested in that. So that was about that time I decided I better go pioneering.
What was the name of the film?
The name of the film was Bernadine. And I went to Nicaragua, and I was in Nicaragua as an English teacher. And the film came to Nicaragua, and they showed it in the president's palace. And the projectionist was one of my students at the English Academy. And he mentioned there in front of the family of the president and that that guy in the acting in the film there he's teaching English here now. Oh, so the press secretary of the president sent a limousine to take me up to the palace once a week to read Time magazine with him. So the film career went on after that. Then they introduced me to the sister of the president, who was a widow. Her husband had died. They told me she's been shut in, Catholic style, for several months. She hasn't been in touch with anybody. We want you to go to the house and give her English lessons. I went to the house, and out on it's a big Spanish hacienda, and out on the balcony in the entry hall comes this lady, gorgeous lady. She wasn't old at all, she was young. She had a black negligee on, and she had a lot of perfume on. She hadn't seen a man in 2 months. And I was supposed to be her English teacher. It frightened me to death. I thought, my God. Her brother was the dictator president of this country. I'm going to get myself in real trouble here. About that time, Baha'u'llah gave me the gift of hepatitis. And I went to bed for 6 weeks and never saw the lady again. I had a couple classes with her. She was getting cozier and cozier. Oh my goodness. If you want to go pioneering, get ready for tests. You'll get all the kinds you can think of. Okay.
There was a bright idea, if we would like to, if you let us take a group picture outside before we finish.
That would be nice if you want to do that. We could all have a picture together. Can remember you.
Thank you so
Are you ready?
much, Mr. Dunbar.
Very good. Thank you.